Hello there! In the winter update we got a new car, and I think it's pretty cute, but for me that car in particular just really highlighted how outdated all the other Bloxburg cars, especially those that were in the game since the beginning, really are. Which is exactly what this video is about. In today's video I will try and draw what I imagine a modern version of some of the outdated Bloxburg cars could look like. Now, as a disclaimer, I don't consider myself to be an artist, and these sketches will reflect that. I just thought that this could be a fun idea, and it's just to kind of show off the concepts I had in mind for what these cars could look like. But yeah, the first car I tried to revamp was the classic we all love, the Roat 500, which turned out to be not that easy. The main problem I had was that the Roat 500 doesn't really have any real distinguishing features that I could copy over for it to still feel the same. Based on the name I thought it would be inspired by the Fiat 500, but after looking them up they didn't really resemble the Roat either. So in the end I just stuck to the block design it had anyway, and I just added some more little details on top. Like for example I added a grille, I added turn signals, I also added mirrors because for some reason Bloxburg cars don't have any. And out of all the cars I'm doing in this video, this one is probably my favorite in terms of like how it came out. In my opinion it still looks kind of charming, but it still looks enough like the reference. Like I'm pretty sure in the context of Bloxburg you would be able to guess what car this is supposed to be. But I don't know, maybe it's also just my favorite because out of all the cars I'm doing in this video, this one is my favorite anyways. Now it's time for the final touches. As you can see I tried doing a glowing effect on top of the headlights. I also tried doing some very basic shading. Please don't judge this attempt. And then I've also just added some extra tiny details like an antenna and some windshield wipers. And here we have the final result. Honestly, I don't think I did too badly with this one. Now for the second car, it shows the Bloxai Voyage. This one was a lot more difficult than the Roat 500, mainly because the Bloxai has a pretty curvy or like bubbly shape instead of the Roat, which was very like boxy. And the bubbly shape just makes it a bit more difficult when it comes to drawing it in like the correct perspective and stuff. In the end it came out alright though in my opinion. Now this car somehow had even less features I could copy over than the Roat, so it somehow achieved to be even more boring than that car. So all I really could do was to keep the round body shape of the car. And I also copied over this weird grille design the car has at the bottom of the bumper. I don't really know why it's that shape, but yeah, I copied that over. Other than that, it's really a generic looking car. Even the name sounds generic if you think about it. Like Voyage? That's like if I named my car the... I can't come up with any synonyms right now. Never mind, looking at these words, these are definitely what cars have been named after before. But I mean, if anything, this just further proves my point that the name is really generic. By the way, I just skipped it when editing this voiceover in post, but I fell down a rabbit hole of these generic car names for like a solid 10 minutes, and those are 10 minutes of my life I will never get back. For me personally, the most difficult part of all of these cars were the wheels. That's probably really easy to guess though, because none of these cars even have real designs on their wheels. They just kind of look like grey dishes. But even just getting the shape of them right was really difficult. For the first car I still did it by hand, but for this one I imported a picture of a real car so I could trace over its wheels. And honestly that did help a bunch. But yeah, drawing circles is like the most difficult thing ever, so I hope you don't judge me too much for cheating a little. For the colors of these cars I chose to just paint them in the default color they come in the game. And I don't know how I didn't notice this when drawing, but I painted the Bloxai Voyage blue, even though in the game it's clearly grey. In all fairness, it does help the car to look a tiny bit less boring, which is an achievement on its own. And this is how it turned out. It's boring and generic, so I must have done a pretty good job. For the final car of today I chose what I feel like is probably one of the least popular cars on Bloxburg in general, the Bought Bullet. I know I said this about the two previous cars as well, but this car was probably the most difficult one to draw out of all of these. Thankfully it is way more blocky than the Bloxai Voyage, and it also has more interesting features I could copy, but I found the overall shape of this car way more difficult to draw, as you will be able to see later, since I had to redraw the roof and the back of the car multiple times. And yeah, you have just seen the first time I had to adjust the roof. Figuring out the shape of this car was not fun at all. This is also the first time where I had to use real-life references instead of just the Bloxburg car itself. I don't know any cars that have headlights that look like this, so I assumed the developers wanted to make it look like those headlights that kind of hide away when they're not being used, which instantly made me think of those old Dodge Chargers, so I used those as reference. I still kept the sort of design of the headlights though. Also, if you remember, at the beginning of today's video I said I don't consider myself an artist, and this car is a great example of why I said that. You may have noticed that the brush strokes look oddly low resolution, and that is because I drew the entire car way smaller than the other ones for whatever reason. I can't even begin to question how I did not notice that when drawing, but yeah, the entire car looks really low resolution now, so sorry about that. In the end I still prefer this car over the Bloxai Voyage though, even just because it looks way more interesting. Like the other cars, I also added some smaller details, like exhaust pipes on the side and side mirrors, because this car is missing them as well. I also looked it up and the new car doesn't seem to have any mirrors either. Mirrors don't seem that difficult to add to a car model, so my best guess is that it's like an art style choice to deliberately make the cars way more dangerous to drive. Or maybe I should just stop reading that deep into the details of a children's game, who knows. Sadly, I lost the recording of me adding the shadows to this car, which kind of sucks, but here we have the finished product. It definitely looks better with the admittedly pretty basic shading I did. And here are all the cars we made during this video. And the inspiration for each one, because why not? Feel free to comment video ideas you'd like to see or art advice you want to give me down below. And I hope I see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching, and bye!